Today we are going to do a tool called Forks in the Road. This is a tool for strategic planning. Now, I suspect maybe you do a formal strategic plan. If you do a formal strategic plan, you might write up a whole document of what your strategic plan is. Maybe you have a PowerPoint deck to present to people as to what your strategic plan might be. Let me take a guess. Let me take a guess as to how you might do your strategic plan. By the way, this is just a common way most people do strategic plans, but you might go look at the market, you might analyze the market, and you might segment the market into segments. And you might say, which segments do we participate in, which segments do we not participate in. And you might look at the growth of each segment, which segments are growing, which segments are kind of petered out, maybe even declining, where do you participate, where do you not participate, and you might create a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, a SWOT analysis. And then based on the SWOT analysis, based on where you participate, based on which markets are growing, you might choose to invest in certain markets that are growing, where you can have opportunities, and maybe protect markets that otherwise are not growing very fast, but you have a presence so that you can continue to reap the benefits. And you create action plans for those investments and for those protections, action plans of projects you need to do, and then give people assignments to conduct those projects. That's broadly how most strategic plans are written. It's a lot of work, a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions by your employees, by your senior executive team. Much time is spent, stuff is written down, PowerPoint slides are created. But have you ever noticed that almost 80% of that time you have spent on stuff that is the same as the last year? And 80% of the time, the stuff that you spend on last year looks the same this year. And whatever that little 20% is that's new, that's the stuff that is most likely to not get done that year. So why do all this? So I'm going to offer you a different technique called Forks in the Road. The idea of this technique is not you do it every year, but every other year. On the off years, when you don't do the full-blown strategic plan, you do the forks in the road. And this technique is based on three principles. The first principle is, when is a decision a strategic decision? Let's take an example. Let's say we, all of you watching this video and me, we are the executive team of a company, and let's say that the company is doing quite well. In fact, the business is growing. We are a manufacturing plant. We have a plant. We went to second shift last year, and right now we are sitting discussing whether we should go to third shift. We have agreed that we should go to third shift because business has grown. We are now got third shift, and in 1 year, we think the demand is going to get to a point where we will not be able to meet demand with the current plant that we have. We have to make an investment in a new plant. It's a $5 million investment. That's a lot of money for us. It will take a year to build the plant, and in about a year, we'll have the demand. Everybody at the table is convinced that the demand is going to continue to grow. We've looked at other options for building the plant. Shall we outsource it? Shall we take it offshore? We've concluded this is the best way, is to build another plant right next door, spend $5 million. Our CFO tells us we have the cash capacity for the $5 million. We all agree we should spend $5 million and build the plant. Is this a strategic decision? Does the $5 million number, which is a large number for us, by the way, does that make it strategic? My claim is no. You see, it's a very tactical decision. This decision is no different than if you were to receive a big order for which you have to buy $5 million of raw material to fulfill the order. It's no different than that. I mean, after all, there are no other choices. There is no controversy at the table as to whether you should build the plant or not. There is no differing point of view. Strategic decisions are always controversial. strategic decisions have controversy. There are some people who think we should go that way and some people who think we should go the other way. If everybody agrees that we should go this way, it is not a strategic decision anymore. To illustrate that, let me change the scenario of that plant that we are building. Let us say a year ago, the same executive team, let us say a year ago we had that when we went to second shift. Let us say one of the members said, hey guys, in about a year, demand is going to continue to grow. In about a year, we're going to go to third shift. And then a year later from now, we're going to say, we better build a plant because a year later we'll need a plant that we can't meet demand. And we're going to spend $5 million on that plant. However, they say, this is a year ago now, they say, however, if we start building a plant now, we'll have 2 years to build the plant. And we can in 2 years, we can build the plant in $4 million because we can kind of do that in slow times. And in $4 million in 2 years, we'd get the plant. That would be a saving of $1 million. Wouldn't we do that? He says. Well, another person at the team says, wait a minute. I mean, if the demand stops growing, what do? We would have spent $4 million. Another person says, but you know what? Demand is going to continue to grow. I think the business is good. It's going to continue to grow. There's a lot of controversy at the table. Some people think we should spend $4 million and build the plant. Some people think we should wait. And looking at all this, the chief person decides we're going to build a plant for $4 million. Now that is a strategic decision. Why is that a strategic decision? You had two very credible alternatives. There were different things you could do. There was controversy at the table. Strategic decisions are controversial. By the same token, strategic decisions have credible alternatives. There's always multiple paths that you can take. Strategic decisions have path A, path B. Both paths are credible. There are people who advocate the paths. They are reasonable, and you have to make a choice. Strategic decisions have credible alternatives. So when you build a strategy for your company, ask yourself, what is an alternative strategy? And have people provide a very credible alternative. Not just blow up the place and go home, but a credible alternative that's different from the one that's being advocated. And finally, whichever path you choose, whichever alternative you choose, strategic decisions are irreversible. In other words, when you make that choice, you have to commit. You have to commit to that choice and take actions, make investments, deploy resources in a manner where you cannot go back, or at least it is very expensive to go back. Strategic decisions are controversial, they have credible alternatives, and the choice is irreversible, or at least very difficult to reverse. Based on that principle, I'm going to give you an alternative way to do strategic planning every off year when you don't do the full-blown plan. It's called forks in the road. Fork in the road says there is a fork, identify a fork in the road that you can go either option A or option B. Find major decisions that you need to make in your company where there are multiple options and you have to choose. Identify a few of these major decisions. In fact, the forks in the road philosophy might say, list a long list of such possibilities and first spend some time choosing the 2 or 3 major decisions for which you're going to make a choice this year. And then spend most of the strategic planning time discussing those 3 chosen items. In each case, find what your options are, what your choices are, and then pick a choice. The entirety of your strategic planning time is spent on discussing the pros and cons of the different options and choosing an option, and then commit to that option. In fact, you can measure how well your execution that year is dependent on the choices you made by asking what fraction of your operating expense would not have been incurred had we made that choice, had we made the other choice. In other words, what are the expenses you are incurring that are contingent on, that depend on, that are specific to the choice you made. If you look at those expenses and say what fraction of the total expenses that represents, it will give you a level of commitment you have made to the strategic plan for that year. This is a much faster way to do a strategic plan, focuses more on the very critical items, but understandably does not look at the market as a whole, which is why you should do this every other year. Forks in the road is an efficient way of really focusing your energies in developing a strategic plan on the critical important items. Forks in the road.